Hello everyone, this is Here's Trivia, and today we're continuing our Liu Bei's Early Life Let's Talk Lore series with episode 3, titled Aiding Tao Qian. Now last time we ended as Taishi Ci arrived in Pingyuan to seek aid on Kong Rong's behalf as a resurgence of yellow turbans under the command of the rebel leader Guan Hai now threatened the safety of Bahai. Surprised that Kong Rong, who was a respected scholar and a descendant of Confucius himself, would even know of him, Liu Bei happily agreed as he sent an army of 3,000 men to help break the siege on Bahai and rescue Kong Rong. And when the Yellow Turban remnants caught wind of this reinforcement army, they immediately gave up on the siege and went back into hiding. Naturally, Liu Bei's army then returned back to Pingyuan, where fighting against Yuan Shao's forces continued. But soon, that fighting would spill over to the Xu province in 193, as Yuan Shao's ally Cao Cao would use the death of his father as an excuse to intensify his campaign against the governor of the Xu province, Tao Qian, who was an ally to Yuan Shu, and thus indirectly to Gongsun Zan. Now, because of the alliance in the Yuan clan proxy war between Yuan Shao and Yuan Shu, Cao Cao and Tao Qian had already been a war long before Cao Cao's father Cao Song was killed on Tao Qian's command. But now with his father's death as a new causa belli, Cao Cao's campaign against Tao Qian would reach a new level of brutality as city after city and town after town were massacred in the name of revenge. Of course, I personally believe Cao Cao's change of tactics had a lot to do with pillaging for wealth and supplies, as he had just recently incorporated a large group of former Yellow Turbans to form his Qingzhou Army Corps. And with limited amount of resources, the only way for Cao Cao to pay their wages and maintain their loyalty was to pillage the wealth of the Xu province. But hoping to escape criticism from the scholars within his own rank, Cao Cao played up the death of his father and the need for revenge in order to justify the massacres inside the Xu province. Facing such atrocity, Tao Qian, who was already 62 at this time, needed outside help, as he reached out to Tian Kai, who was Gongsun Zan's appointed governor of the Qing province, which shared a border with the Xu province to the north. So in late 193, Tian Kai brought Liu Bei with him to help Tao Qian defend the Xu province from Cao Cao's onslaught. At this time, Liu Bei had a little less than 2,000 troops under his direct command, which would be further bolstered with roughly 1,000 more refugees that Liu Bei would conscript on the way down to the Xu province, as Cao Cao's bloodthirsty march had spooked many of the Xu province citizens to flee in terror. But by the time Liu Bei and Tian Kai's forces would arrive in late 193, Cao Cao's forces had already retreated to take a temporary respite for winter. So, with war against Yuan Shao still ongoing in the north, Tian Kai decided to return back north, while Liu Bei was instructed to remain behind, as Tao Qian would gift him 4,000 additional units of the prized Danyang heavy infantry troops, and name him as the new prefect for the entire province of Xu. In essence, by this point, with the Xu province on the brink of complete destruction by the hands of Cao Cao, the aging Tao Qian decided to entrust the defense of the Xu province over to Liu Bei. However, by next April in 194, Cao Cao's army will return once again to continue their rampage, with 5 more cities being massacred as Cao Cao's forces would pillage as far as Donghai and Langya before finally meeting Liu Bei's forces at Tandong, where Cao Cao would smash through a coalition of Liu Bei's army and Tao Qian's general Cao Bao's army. Then, with Liu Bei beaten, Cao Cao would resume his march west and continue to pillage until news of Zhang Miao and Chen Gong's betrayal and the arrival of Lu Bu finally forced him back to the Yan province to take care of internal matters. While the threat of Cao Cao would dissipate, Tao Qian's health would fail in the winter of 194, as seeing the northern half of his province in ruins took a toll on the aging Tao Qian. On his deathbed, Tao Qian would be convinced by his close advisor, Mi Zhu, that only Liu Bei could protect the Shu province from further bloodshed, as plans were made to have Liu Bei take over following Tao Qian's death. While all of this was going on, Liu Bei was stationed at Xiaopei and unaware of his fate. Now, given Mi Zhu's prominent role in Liu Bei's imminent takeover of the Shu province, it is only fair for us to give a bit of background to Mi Zhu. Now, the one thing that you need to know about Mi Zhu is that he was wealthy. And he was not just wealthy, he was Warren Buffett level of wealthy, with assets in the hundreds of millions range. Now, Mi Zhu's clan did not have gentry origins, as they were not scholars, so did not get rich off their titles or government posts. Instead, the Mi clan were in the land business, as frequent turbulence in the Shu province meant farmlands would often become abandoned or barren, as natural disasters, war, bandits, or rebellions would push farmers from their land. And once these farmlands were abandoned, the Mi clan would swoop in and purchase them at a discounted price, and then redistribute them to tenant farmers in their employment. Then from that point on, they would pocket most of the profit, as these fortunes fueled the purchase of more and more land as the cycle continued. And by the time Mi Zhu was in charge of the clan, it was recorded that the Mi clan had over 10,000 tenant farmers in their employment, as they basically ran a privatized Tun Tian operation. And given the Mi clan's wealth and influence, when Tao Qian was assigned to be the governor of the Shu province, Tao Qian made Mi Zhu his personal advisor, as Tao Qian's main strategy to consolidate his own power in the Shu province was by putting strong local gentry clans in positions of power rather than going against them. And even though Mi Zhu was not a member of the gentry clan, his tremendous wealth gave him a seat at the table. Now, the most interesting part of all this is why Mi Zhu became enamored with Liu Bei, as the two of them have no prior relationship and no connections, as they come from completely different worlds, with Liu Bei growing up poor, while Mi Zhu grew up in one of the wealthiest clans in all of China at the time. So the only reason that makes sense is somehow Liu Bei's personal charisma captivated Mi Zhu to not only recommend him as a potential successor to Tao Qian, but also in the future turn down an administrator offer from Cao Cao to continue working for Liu Bei, even though Liu Bei had very little, and to marry his own sister, Lady Mi, to Liu Bei when Liu Bei was just defeated and on the run from Lü Bu. So at the end of the day, Mi Zhu's vocal and financial support of Liu Bei would play a huge role in Liu Bei's path to ultimately becoming the founding emperor of the kingdom of Shuhan. But we're getting way ahead of ourselves, as with Mi Zhu properly introduced, let's go back to our story. As before the calendar would turn 195, Tao Qian would die of illness at the age of 63, leaving behind the entire Shu province to Liu Bei. Mi Zhu would personally escort Liu Bei from Xiaopei to Xuzhou, but upon hearing Tao Qian's will, Liu Bei initially refused, as he felt he was not personally qualified to take on such a grand task. At first, Liu Bei even suggested that Yuan Shu in the neighboring Yang province would be a better choice, as the Yuan clan had prestige that he cannot compare to. But Chen Deng, who was an up-and-coming official in charge of Tun Tian at the time, strongly opposed Yuan Shu, stating that Yuan Shu has the brand name but lacks the ability to govern. In addition, Kong Rong, the chancellor of Bahai, who had received help from Liu Bei before, also concurred with Chen Deng, as Liu Bei now had no choice but to take over the Shu province. And with that, our episode comes to an end, as we'll return next time to look at Liu Bei's struggles in the Shu province, as wars between his three neighbors in Cao Cao, Lü Bu, and Yuan Shu will present Liu Bei an impossible choice. So hopefully you all have enjoyed this episode enough to hit that like button to help support the channel, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!